Russell Jackman is a graduate of the McGeorge School of Law, University of Pacific, and was admitted to the State Bar of California in June 1994. He is a frequent lecturer on a wide variety of computer subjects, including the California State Bar annual MCLE conferences and section education institutes from 1999 to the present. He has been a professor at the College of Marin, Cal State Hayward, St. Mary's College, and San Francisco State University from 2001 through 2004. He was the head trainer for Weil, Gotchel, and Manges in 2005. From 2004 to 2005, he was vice chair of the California State Bar's Law Practice Management and Technology Committee, where he has been a member since 1996. He is the author of the introductory chapter in the CEB publication, Internet Guide to California Lawyers 2001, and has been a regularly featured author in the Law Practice Management and Technology publication, The Bottom Line, since, and participated in San Francisco Trial Lawyer Association's Trial of the Year 2011, Miller v. CPMC. He works specifically with law offices and attorneys that need to get the most out of their legal technology. He creates PowerPoint presentations for opening statements, direct examinations, and closing statements to be used in court, and can work directly with attorneys in their presentations and images so they have the most powerful visual presentation possible. Mr. Jackman has proven results over his 12-plus years working with attorneys throughout Northern California on their presentations, resulting in millions of dollars in verdicts for their clients. As an effective MCLE presenter in the often difficult field of technology, Russell has the benefit of also being a hands-on trainer and computer consultant. He regularly receives laudatory praise for both his practical yet charismatic style. Jackman also works with law offices and solo attorneys to upgrade their older systems to new ones, troubleshoot existing setups, and trains attorneys and staff on Microsoft Office programs such as Outlook, Word, and Excel, network setups, and clouding their information so that a paperless office is possible. Any law office needs that need to improve the way technology works their office's needs should not hesitate to call or email Mr. Jackman. He can be reached at computerconsult@aol.com or at 415-892-2617.
Thank you very much, Robert. I really appreciate that introduction. My name, again, is Russell Jackman, and I welcome you to this very interesting topic that we're going to be talking about today, and it's called Bringing Your Own Tech to the Office, and what is the plan? And as you heard from my introduction, I've been working a lot with computer technology in the modern law office, and I've been definitely working in the area of seeing the trend of law offices that are clouding their information and having attorneys that are coming into their firm, into their business, and needing advice when they bring their own technology or they have their employees bring their own technology into their business. In fact, this is sort of this lecture has two sides to it. And the first side of it, obviously, is what you can do to advise your clients that are having that have their employees bring their own technology into their office. But the other side of it is also your own firm, and the fact that probably attorneys for your firm will likely be bringing their own technology into the law office. So it's important not only that you can advise clients on what to do for a plan, but it's pretty important for you to think of the plan that you have for your own office and what you might do to safeguard and secure your law office from the situation, some of the things that we'll talk about here with the challenges that bringing your own technology brings. Now, I guess the primary question that most people ask when you start off with dealing with bringing your own technology is, why should you bring your own technology? I mean, when you think about, say, the law office from 20 years ago, okay, attorneys would just go into the law office, or maybe 30 years ago, I'm getting older here, from the 80s and maybe the early 90s, there really wasn't the prevalence of the internet in the way that you had things. So attorneys would just go check into the law office, use the computer that was there at the law office, and then they'd go home. And the information stayed in the law office. But that's not the way things are right now. And so to that extent, that we see that one of the incentives that people are coming up with is that you can lower your IT costs if you don't have to maintain a set of computers specifically at the office. So attorneys bring their own equipment with them, especially in the area of cell phones, so that the firm doesn't have to issue a separate piece of equipment. Certainly in the days of yore, going back, I hate to say it, 10 years, in 2005, it was common for law offices to issue, the law office BlackBerry. And that would be something that everyone would carry around with them. And most people were, if they had cell phones, they were new to cell phones. So they didn't necessarily have the ability to pick and choose when they would have certain things going on as far as their technology stuff. It would just be a standard law office BlackBerry. They would use that BlackBerry. It would only be connected to the law office account. The law office would have complete control over everything that was there, but it came with an expense. You would have to issue those BlackBerries. Issuing those BlackBerries cost a lot of money. Maintaining those BlackBerries cost a lot of money. They get lost, or they get stolen, or they get broken, and the law office ultimately had to pay for them. If the employees bring their own cell phones, then that's going to obviously cost a lot less. Now, the concept would also be that you don't need to train people so much on the technology that they own themselves. They already know what they have, and they know what they're working with, so you don't have to have special seminars. I mean, you have to obviously explain to them how to log into whatever network that you have, but pretty much, after that, if they want to, deal with the ringtones and things like that, they can talk to their own carrier about it. And the employee familiarity with their own technology is a plus. You have a lot less complaining and people being upset, saying, oh, well, I am not a BlackBerry person, I'm an iPhone person, or I'm an Android person. Well, if you just give them a portal to get onto, and they just use their cell phone, whatever cell phone they have, or whatever laptop they have, or whatever, tablet they have, then they don't have to worry so much about, oh, well, I have to learn a new system, I have to get used to something that I'm not normally working with, and that kind of employee familiarity is a driving force, because also employees will be able to deal with the customization on their own, and that's something that they tend to like. We're always saying that what I've been saying before is that the employees already own this technology. So it's licensed to them. They don't have to, if they want to upgrade it, they deal with their own plans. They deal with their own minutes. Certainly the company can have certain plans or certain things that they can pay for to provide that sort of information, that kind of separate plans, so that employees are not burning up their own minutes. But in a lot of cases, I've certainly seen in a lot of instances where employees are just using their own cell phones. They're just bringing their own cell phones. It's not paid by the company. It's not paid by the law office. And it's just something that either they get some kind of a stipend for it, or they just pay for that bill, and it's just part of their month, whatever else they get paid on top of it, say they're independent contractors or people that are part-timers, they just usually pay for those minutes on their own if they use their phone. And that means the upgrades are usually left to the employee, which really will lower IT costs overall for whatever company or firm that allows employees to bring their own technology. Especially with cell phones, people are on their own cell phone plan and replace them every couple of years, or even sooner. That's something that, again, is a plus. You don't have to do a office-wide rollout of technology all at once. People just replace it when they need to, which is good because you're not forcing people to upgrade when they're not ready, and that lowers complaints. But also people, when they are ready, can go ahead and make that upgrade, and you don't have to sit there and weigh it out, company-wide and do, a rollout, which is always expensive, and there's always problems with that. The overall convenience of having 24/7 access without needing multiple devices is becoming one of the big drivers to people bringing their own technology to their office. And that is because it used to be you had to have a desktop to have the power of managing the sort of software that most law offices, most offices, businesses needed. But we've really gotten to a point where your average tablet and even cell phone has more power than the loaded desktops of 10 years ago. I'm seeing, quad-core processors being put in tablets and quad-core processors in phones. And it's probably not going to be long before we see i7-type processors in both phones and tablets. It's just going to keep going up and ratcheting up, and things are going to get smaller and more powerful. So that is being chained to a desktop and having all your information just at the desktop at the office is just not something that, especially future generations of workers and or attorneys are going to be used to the idea of, if I need my information, I don't have to check into the office to get it. I can just go and grab it off of the cloud or whatever device I have and work on it there, when I need to, even if I'm at the beach, even if I'm waiting in line, at the DMV, whatever, at a hotel, those sort of things. I can still check in, see my email, go log into a secure portal, get my documents, work on those documents, collaborate with certain people, check in, to meetings and all that other stuff, all through whatever, piece of technology that I'm familiar with and I know how to use. And that's important because technology that people don't know how to use and don't want to work with is really not worth anything at all. So that's one reason that bringing your own technology has become really popular in recent years. And I just believe that the trend is going to continue. That's why I've been getting a lot of questions about it, and I formed this talk, because really what needs to happen is you need to have a plan for it. So what are the challenges? Well, one of the biggest challenges, as you probably can imagine, revolves around security. Security is something that really is not in a fixed state. In other words, with security, you're really challenged with the idea of what device is going to be accessing it, who has access to that device, how many different devices that you're going to have attached to your whatever system you're bringing. And, it could be people accessing your computer from or your network system from a library or from a friend's computer or from a phone or a tablet or multiple, different devices. So it's really, understanding that and being aware of that challenge is one of the primary things right there. It's obviously very scary for a lot of employers to give up that control. As I was saying, the law offices back from the 80s and early 90s, you could control that information. It stayed at the law office. Nobody had a way. I mean, even, floppy disks and so forth could only carry a small amount of information with them. Now people with USB drives, I've seen USB drives that are over 100 gigs in size. You can fit pretty much an entire library of a law firm's documents or a business's documents on something that's no bigger than your thumb, or you could have even a micro SD card in your phone and store everything in your phone. So there's certainly the ability to carry large amounts of data and information portably, and in a lot of ways surreptitiously. I mean, there's no way for a business to know for sure once someone has access to files what was copied and when they copied. I mean, I guess you could really tear apart your system and find out when certain things were accessed, but it's a lot of effort, and for most businesses, not something they can do very easily, especially if you're talking multiple locations and maybe international locations. It's going to be hard to know exactly where that information is going. So by letting everybody access it from wherever, you do lose something as far as the element of control is concerned. Privacy is obviously a very large concern as well. You're going to have challenges with people's information being accessible, not just from your office. When you lose control, someone's data and their information may be exposed as well, and so that's going to be a really big challenge. The inventory of your data, being able to know who has what, where, and when, and what is the most recent file, who has what versions of it. There's never always a perfect answer. Sure, there are file checkout systems and ways that you can see who's working on what version of what document, but there's always that possibility that rogue versions of it get downloaded to people's personal emails. That's a situation that I was brought in on a few months ago, and it was actually pretty messy because what had happened was this employee was given access to the company, to this dental company's records, and instead of setting up a portal for them to access it on directly from their machine, they just gave this employee the Outlook, a way to just patch directly into their Outlook and download the emails directly to her computer. In other words, like a POP setup, so that it wasn't even stored on the server, on their own server. The employee was able to actually download the emails directly to her machine, and so I had to go in and not only take out and find the responsive emails, but delete most of the other, any emails that were responding to it. It was a very difficult situation, and we had to also look through her hard drive and try to find any kind of files that were, any attachments that were associated with it. It was a big mess, and this company had let things get out of control by kind of just sort of being lazy and just saying, oh, here you go, just why don't you log into Outlook at home and do this? And instead of knowing where their data was, and suddenly when they had litigation problems, they realized, oh my gosh, our data's all over the place, and that became really out of control. So the biggest challenge maybe out of all of this, and this is kind of where I'm headed with this, and this is where we're going, is convenience. The challenge of convenience, and whether it's the protections that you put in place are going to wind up being convenient enough for people to use and not restrict you from being able to access the data in the way that you need to. It's in fact, that brings us to the next slide. Convenience and safety have to be balanced. I brought this up because, believe it or not, I Googled the New York City door lock, and this is an example of what it sometimes is like when you want to be super secure. You have 100 different locks and combos and bolts and passwords and so forth on your entryway. Well, this door is very secure, although I guess you could just bash it off from the hinges, but this door is very secure. But would you want to go out and go and get the paper or go and check the mailbox? You have to open up every single one of those locks, open the door, close the door behind you, and then when you want to come back in, you got to unlock every one of those locks. It's not going to be something you want to do. You'll either, one, take you 45 minutes to get in and out of the door every time, or two, you'll do what most people do, which is only lock one lock, and it's probably going to be the easiest lock that you have to get in and out of something like that. And so convenience and safety need that balance. There needs to be a conscious effort to say to yourself and to say to the company, to say to the firm, whatever is letting your own technology being brought in, safety is very important, and you can't not have safety. You don't certainly want to have a beaded curtain in downtown San Francisco. If you have an apartment in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, you don't want a beaded curtain as your front door. But on the other hand, you don't want to have a million locks, and that's why I see maybe a lot of employers have their problem is that they just jump to one side or the other. They're either way too easy and way too convenient, and they just let stuff happen, or they're so locked down that nobody else can use it, and including people that really need to. So where should we start on something like this? Okay. I guess, having a plan is I guess the first thing was realizing that you need a plan and saying to yourself, okay, if I'm going to let technology come in, or if you're working with an employer that's bringing their own technology, that's going to let employees bring their own technology in, you have to say, all right, we need this plan, and then we have to start thinking about what to do. Well, the first key element is to do a bring your own technology inventory. In other words, who is bringing what to access the company's servers, okay? Is it phones? Is it tablets? Is it laptops? It's most likely going to be all three. Whose phones? Whose tablets? Whose laptops? Do people have USB drives on their keychains? Think of that. And do people have micro SD cards in their phones? Are they going to use those things to store company data or law firm data? What sort of access do they need? Now, this is really an interesting little sub-point that I've seen as a pitfall for a lot of companies that are trying to bring their own technology in, and that is a lot of times the IT person that's in charge of this gets pretty lazy, and they will, or sometimes there isn't an IT person and the boss or whoever's in charge just goes ahead and gives administrative access to absolutely everyone that joins the firm or the company, even temporary employees. Yes, I know those of you who just heard that on the other end probably just rolled your eyes, but I'm serious. I've seen it happen, and it causes nothing but problems. So it is important, if you're going to allow people to bring their own technology, to limit their access. They really should only have file sharing that goes to the level of what they need and not beyond that. Just giving everybody blanket control access to everything is a lot of times a formula for problems. What is the status of these devices? So you need to, maybe certain devices you can have levels of access that are higher than, say, like in other words, laptops and desktops than, say, phones and tablets. And you need to also know which operating systems you're working with, and how the security that you're working with may require a higher level of operating system implementation than what the employees have on their phones. For instance, let's say they're working with an iPhone 4, okay? And they might. iPhone 4s work. If they aren't working with the iOS, and remember, keep in mind this is, I'm talking to you guys in June of 2015 when I'm saying this. Let's say your iOS is a 7, and right now a 7.1, and right now the current iOS is 8.3, I think. And if the point being that if they don't upgrade their level of iOS, they're not going to have the latest levels of security as well. And so they may either have access problems or they may be exposing your network to a greater problem, or the employee, whoever you're working with, they're going to expose them to greater problems because they're lagging behind. Fortunately, thank God, Windows XP has thoroughly expired, but there are still people that I've seen running around with XP systems. Maybe they're on laptops. Maybe they're on home desktops that they're using to access the company's server and their data and information. If that's the case, a Windows XP system has 600% more likelihood, and I think it's even greater now, maybe it's more like about 900% more likely, to be infected and have no way of fixing it. So that sort of inventory is really critical to find out what levels of OSs people are trying to use to access your system and what kind of level of security they have built in on their system that's trying to access your system. So antivirus status and firewalls is a major, major headache and necessity when dealing with bringing your own technology. There isn't an answer I could give you in the next 30 minutes and literally 2 days or 2 months as far as like where you need to be on your firewall status. It's always going to be a challenge, especially when people are adding new technology, to acknowledge and make sure they have the right sort of access and that they're not exposing too much of a hole by the technology that they're bringing in. It's just going to be one of those constant upkeep things. It's sort of the minus part of the IT level. Yes, you're not having to maintain everybody's BlackBerry, but on the other hand, you still have to keep track of your firewall and make sure that people aren't creating huge holes for you. There are many smartphones, they were surveyed, I think it was at the time 65% or maybe 70% of them didn't have any kind of protection at all, and we're talking no passwords or anything. So if the phone was lost, if the phone was stolen, or the tablet is lost or stolen, people would just log right on in and do whatever they want to it. So if you're going to have people access your firm or employers are going to have employees have anyone use their technology, passwords have to be mandatory. And as I said, many iPads without passwords or password resets, or they don't activate the Find My Tablet, Find My PC protection software, so that or location services, so that if it's lost or stolen, they can't deactivate it, and that's a problem too. You want the ability for anyone that's using the technology that they're bringing in to have that sort of fail-safe, so that if they lose it or it gets stolen, that they can deactivate it and wipe it remotely, so that they don't have to worry about any kind of data being lost or stolen from the company. And then this is something that I'm seeing certainly with companies and law firms that have a lot of major challenges as far as technology
security goes is the key fob or password change on a timer. If you can see on the lower right side, there's the RSA Secure ID password generator. It generates a code anywhere from 8 to 12 digits. Actually, it can be longer than that. That changes every 5 minutes, I think, and that timing can even change, on a faster basis, so that if you need to access it, whatever you're working on will automatically log you out if you're inactive after, sometimes 5 minutes or so, and then after that you need to type in this randomly generated password that keeps regenerating every several minutes, so that nobody has a given password that is set for any amount of time, which is both good in the sense that it's very secure. It's bad if you ever lose one of these key fobs. So you don't want to have that happen. But it's this sort of thing and sort of dual layers of security and these like changing passwords or things that are not set to the individual seem to be kind of a trend as where things are going. So you may want to check that out and keep tabs on that. But what we really are seeing, whether you like it or not, is the localization of data is a thing of the past. So what we need is a clear policy dealing with the fact that data is no longer going to be just all on a server. People just don't expect data to be at the office any longer. It's just not where the next generation of workers and employees and even employers are headed. You'd say, well, all this is being done for the employee, but it's really done for the employer's benefit, because the employer gets work done whenever. They don't have to wait for the employee to get in, check in, log into their computer at their office, and then start working. People can work wherever, and when people can work wherever, you are going to be more productive if it's done correctly. And to get it done correctly, we need that clear policy. So you've got to make sure that people are not using their personal email and they're not attaching things from their personal email or attaching it to anything that leaves the office system or the office environment, okay? And I could, again, probably give an entire lecture just based on this point alone, which is how people are sharing things through social media. Of course, that's what social media is. It's a sharing platform. And so you have the challenges that are brought because people just somehow seem like they can't resist using social media, whenever they have an issue, whenever they have a point they want to make, whenever they want to just, brag about something, they'll throw it up on social media. And it's very hard to control, and it creates that sort of leak out situation where it could be a problem. And so having a policy on making sure that things that are within the company stay in the company, or within the firm stay in the firm and don't leak out to social media, is really, I think, a very vital part of the plan. And really, just the device can't be shared with friends and family. As I mentioned with that other case that I was working with, the husband had gotten on the computer and then he had sent some emails to himself, so then his computer basically was infected, quote unquote, with files from this company, so we had to go search his computer. So again, you just don't want your data to go anywhere but your own system. And so really what they should have done in this instance is this employee should have never used her own version of Outlook to access the email. She should have either accessed the email strictly through a web browser, or even better would have been a VPN, virtual private network, or a tunnel of some type where she would have logged into one of the company's computers remotely and used that computer completely remotely and not saved any files at all to her system. That would have been a better solution, but instead it was a big mess. So that brings us to web portals and VPNs. It's usually They are not the easiest thing in the world to set up or maintain, but when you think about the problems that they solve, they're certainly worth it. They're the best way to control data access, because with the VPN, you really can set someone up, and without having to do a lot on the server level, you can really create a narrow tunnel for people just to access the documents that you assign for them to access, or that the employer will assign to access. So VPNs web portals and VPNs are usually the best way to control access. They're not the easiest thing to set up, but once you get them set up, they really allow the control that you're looking for without necessarily localizing your data. In the past, they were very expensive to maintain, but I've seen deals now where virtual private servers are set up for maybe like $20, $30 a month. And that's one that many different people can access. It's not just for one person. But it's become a cheap and effective way to have that sort of remote access without having to spend a lot of money, or even having to tie up your own computer in your office and maintain that. You can pay someone, say like Amazon or Rackspace, and I'm not endorsing any one particular company, there's hundreds of them, that allow you to rent space on their server. They will set up that server for you. And from there, you can have your programs installed, your data installed, and have people access it without necessarily using up all that space on your own computer and having to maintain a server and so forth, buy a server, maintain it, and set up the access for it. As I said, they're as little as $40 a month, and for a lot of companies, that's a great way to maintain those things. And then we're seeing cloud data servers really become in prominence. It's the one challenge that I'm seeing with the cloud data servers is not necessarily the cloud data themselves, although it is important to keep in mind that if you put everything in the cloud, that's where it is. And if you don't pay your bill and you have a problem with the company and they pull the plug, that data's gone. You don't have it. It's not in your hands. So you have to also keep in mind that it's worth it to have a means to localize your data just in case. Not everyone's internet is always perfect all the time, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You should have a means, or a company should make a plan to have a regular local backup being done of the server. Now, I know it's never going to be perfect and it's not going to be always right on time, but if you can even get the most critical data backed up and locally saved so that you have it in two places at once, that is probably the best way to give yourself a guarantee that just in case something bad happens, you always have access to your system. For example, yesterday I was trying to access Dropbox, and Dropbox at around 10 p.m. last night just wasn't working. Now, I have the files in other locations, so it wasn't a big deal to me, but I could see if you were using Dropbox as your sole source of clouding information, and that is where everything was, you could have some trouble. Now, good news is that Dropbox does save those files locally as well. If you set it up with the app or you set it up with the program, it will save those files locally, but I'm sure there were some people who were inconvenienced yesterday because of that. So major issues that are facing the use of bringing your own technology. And I see this, I'm in Marin County, and I see this a lot. I think we were a really high-tech area based in Northern California, but there's certainly some parts of Marin up in the hills and so forth that don't have a very good internet connection. And if your internet connection sucks, your bring your own technology strategy may really be challenged. So make sure your internet connection is pretty good. And how secure is your connection? Keeping in mind that cable, which is a shared access for a lot of people, unlike DSL, does create greater patch-in challenges for people. Again, making sure you have your firewall in place is important. And the connection quality is going to be not only important on the end of how your base system is connected to the internet, in other words, your server, your office, or if you're connected to somebody through the web, their connection's important, but also the people who are using the technology, their connection's important. If they have a bad cell phone plan, for instance, that doesn't reach the areas that you're trying to work with, then you need to address that and figure out, okay, well, how can we, maybe changing plans or maybe even changing providers will get you the connection that you need, the connection quality that you need. We were talking earlier about multiple operating systems. You're dealing with Android. You're dealing with the iOS. You're dealing with BlackBerry in some situations, PC and Mac, and even Linux. So Linux is, by the way, the operating system that you'll really find on most phones, Androids, and the iOS. They're, different sort of versions of Linux that are installed on those phones. So you have some real challenges going there because not one specific technology is being used, not one specific OS is being used to access your server or whatever cloud system you have. So and then there's always new devices, and I'm not going to be able to say today on June 2015 that I know what things people are going to access the internet with and access your office's internet or your client's offices with through the internet a year from now, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now. All I can say is that though whatever new technology comes in, I guarantee you is going to create a major issue that you have to deal with. And I don't know what it is, but it will be an issue. So let's talk about implementing a Bring Your Own Technology program, either at your law firm or at the office of a client that you have. The first step, believe it or not, and sad to say I've seen so many situations where this first step wasn't even done, is to survey the employees, okay? And that is, you want to also give the employees an opt-in and an opt-out situation. So they can opt in to the program or they can opt out because maybe they like things the way they are through the office, and maybe they don't want to use up their cell minutes. Maybe they don't want to bring in their laptop, or maybe they do want to share their tablet with their kids, so they don't want to adhere to those rules. That's okay. Maybe the company or your firm can supply something then in that instance, or find some other way to deal with the employee that doesn't want to be in it. But I think a part of the survey should really be focusing on how employees feel about the bringing their own technology program, because if it's not something people like, it's not something that will wind up getting used. And if they don't use it or they use it reluctantly, then the security levels are going to drop, the adherence to privacy is going to drop, it's going to be abused or it's going to be misused in a way that is going to create security problems. Again, so many different little nuances on how that can happen, but I think if you use your imagination, you can sort of see making an employee use the technology that they don't want to use, or forcing them to bring their own technology that they don't want to bring to the office is only going to cause problems. Again, as I was talking about at the very beginning, find out who needs what access. Not everybody needs administrative privileges, but you also don't want to restrict someone so much that every 5 minutes they got to call up your IT department, or they got to call up the IT department and say, I need access to this, I need access to that. When I was working at Weil, Gotshal and Manges, everything was running through New York City, and even though we're on the West Coast, if something happened after 2 p.m. Pacific time, a lot of times, whoever you were trying to get access to in the IT department in New York had already left for the day. And it made it very challenging when you would have things happen, mid-afternoon in California or anywhere on the West Coast, and you would have problems and situations that would occur, and the people that were the only ones that had the access codes and knew how to get into any of these files and grant access to people or troubleshoot it were out of the office. So it's important to know who needs what access, set that up correctly the first time, and at least make some sort of provisions for how you would grant greater access or restrict access if you need to on the fly. Not everyone is as high sensitivity as I think a lot of companies sort of think going in, and they don't really restrict people's access because they get lazy. And I've seen, unfortunately, temp people being given administrative access to sensitive files or just all the files, because let's say the person that the temp is replacing, they have that temp log in as the employee that left or was out sick or, pregnancy leave or whatever. They have that person log in as, Gina or Tracy or whatever, or Bob or what have you, and that person happens to have administrative access. So it's not that they're just bringing in a temporary employee, you're temp one, and we're going to give you administrative access. But they're saying, oh, well, we need you to work on XYZ's files, and we're just going to have you log in as them. Now, you're giving away a password that's probably not going to wind up getting changed once the temp leaves, and the temp has access to all these different files that probably they don't need access to. So not a good policy, and certainly something to be aware of. Then it's important to survey what technology is currently out there and to see what is being accessed, who has what sort of operating systems, how up-to-date are they. If they're going to access the company's servers, are they going to stay up-to-date on it? Is that something they're going to be committed to? You need to know about that. You need to think about support options and who's going to help interact with, say the Mac side of things, who's going to interact with the cell phone side of things, who's going to interact with the tablet side of things, because there's going to be different issues that come up with that. It may all be the same person, but who knows about that at your firm or at the company? Who's responsible for that? And are you expecting the cell phone company to maintain that phone and to deal with support situations? Maybe so. If that's the case, make sure you spell that out. And then making sure the web access and portal function in watertight ways. In other words, that you've tested it, you've tested the security on it, you've had people access it with their phones and their tablets and their laptops in a variety of different environments. Is it fast enough for them? Is it responsive enough for them? Is it secure enough for them? Is it easy enough for them to access, yet secure enough on the employer's end that they have the reassurances that everything's going to be okay if they set that up? That's really important. Usage policies, who pays for what? That, again, could probably cover another hour of arguing back and forth. In fact, when I did this thing live, I had to, pull people away from the usage policy part because everyone was talking about it, and it became a real major side conversation. And that, I hate to say, is a low-tech issue. It's going to have to come down to what the company or firm can afford, plus a combination of what employees and can afford and what can be done for that. Making sure everyone reads and acknowledges the policies, that you're just not assuming they know it. Even temp employees need to be notified about that. If the company is big enough, really should have a pilot program done so that you let the employees just a sample, but a good sample. In other words, a sampling of an array of different types of access, people that are accessing it on a high security level, people who are accessing it on a low security level, people who are accessing it through their cell phones, people who are accessing it through Starbucks and the wireless network at Starbucks. You'd be surprised how much business gets done at Starbucks. A lot of it does. Or, other different home network setups. That would be a smart way to really give your network its level of water tightness before you roll it out. Especially if you've got 5, 6 offices, or you're talking international offices. I think having a pilot program is necessary, and you want to do it in small bites before you take one giant chomp. Some more info on implementing your own bring your own technology program. Here's some resources that I used. One of them is Citrix. There's a solution. They have a bring your own device overview thing, and Citrix is one of the main leaders in virtual networking and setting up VPNs and cloud servers and so forth. So you might want to check them out. There are many virtual server hosts to choose from, and I'm not, again, endorsing any one particular one, but usually the ones that are providing internet access, such as like GoDaddy, that are web, the ones that like domain servers, like GoDaddy and Rackspace and Amazon, HostGator. They're all ones that also help people set up websites and host websites. They tend they're getting into the virtual server business. So you can really check amongst these different competitors and see if there's a price and structure and functionality program that works for you. So Rackspace, GoDaddy, Amazon, HostGator, any one of those. And so for server security, there's a lot of different ones to choose from. I like the big companies such as Barracuda, McAfee, and Norton, because you can really rely on them. They've got millions of customers, and they're used to the challenges that virtual private servers and remote access can provide. And I talked about the RSA key fob security coding, and you can see that there's the RSA has a link that you can check there for the secure ID key fob and the pricing on that and how that all works and how you can distribute that to your employees to create a safer networking environment. And this is a bibliography here of all the things that I used to help come up with the structure for today's talk. And so basically, in conclusion, I'd like to just give a quick overview of some of the topics that we talked about during this lecture, which is that you're going to be given, bring your own technology creates challenges. It's not a perfect system yet because it's so new, and that we haven't really hit the limits and we haven't hit the parameters of all the things that bringing your technology creates for an office. But it's a trend, and it's a trend that is not going away, and it's one that I think maybe from generations past it's not expected, to bring your own technology, but the employers of the future and the employees of the future are going to expect this sort of thing. So you have to be ahead of the curve on this. And rather than being reactionary to something like this and have to work sort of behind the 8 ball on this and figure out, what's my plan after we've already started bringing in technology, after we've already started having problems, which is usually, again, why I get called in. It's the other way around. You say, okay, before we even start moving in this technology, before we even take these steps, and it's very tempting to jump right in and start using the technology, the reduced IT costs and the employee familiarity stuff is very tempting to want to have in place right away. you have to take the step back and say to yourself, okay, what are the issues? Have we addressed all these particular issues, and are we going to be able to come up with a plan that makes sense both economically and functionally for our office or our law office or whatever business that we're advising or thinking about it in our own firm? That's, I think, where what I want to see as a result of you attending and viewing this particular talk, is that I really want people who are watching this and viewing this to get the message that it's time to think of that plan ahead of time before putting any technology in place. That will make your office the most secure, or whatever place that you're working with, the most secure and the most functional when people are bringing in their own technology. Thank you very much for listening today, and I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions or any comments, I would welcome them at my email address, which is calmputerconsult, CALMPUTERCONSULT @AOL.com, or you can reach me at 415-892-2617. You can also check me out on LinkedIn, and I really appreciate your time and your efforts today in listening to my lecture. Thank you very much.